Welcome to Lead with Love, Live Aligned. I am Coach Catherine. I am a self-leadership and relationship coach. This podcast is number 124. It's called Build Personal Boundaries from Love, Not Fear. I hear the word boundaries all over the internet in so many, and in conversation. And the definition of boundaries seems to be quite broad. So this podcast is my definition of personal boundaries, and I'll give an example and talk about it probably ad nauseum to a certain extent. But personal boundaries are out of love. They feel really good. In my opinion, boundaries or rules or demands are from fear. They're out of force. They're out of pain or something very not fun. Let's put it that way. So let's dive in. And here's a quote that I kind of wanted to start off this podcast with. And actually, it's kind of a question more than a quote. So what if your personal boundaries weren't walls, right? So if your personal boundaries were not walls to keep people out, but rather maybe fences, right? Like the white picket fence that you could step over. What if it's just a fence to keep you in alignment with what truly deeply matters to you most? How would your life change? Okay, so contemplate that. Feel free to put it in the comments, whatever thoughts you have, questions about that now or throughout this podcast, or maybe even later. You know, a lot of times when I'm in a coaching session with a client, they may not get a bunch of aha moments or insights at the time of our session, but they'll unfold after, maybe the same day, or maybe even the following day or the following week. That's where the gold is. So that's what we want to look for. Breakthroughs, insights, ahas, epiphanies, whatever you want to call it. I think they're all one of the same thing. Or wisdom is another thing I like to call it, like deep internal wisdom from your soul. Everybody calls it something different. So I'll use different words depending on the context, or if I'm working with a client, if they have their version or way they like to talk about it, then, and sometimes people talk about spirituality or God, you know, or whatever it is that they believe in. So universe, I mean, there's so many different ways, right? All synonymous. So the metaphor I want to start off with, because you know I love a good metaphor. I think metaphors that open up our mind, expand our mind to see things differently. Metaphors, I think, sometimes can make topics easier to talk about rather than what's at hand, right? We can change it into a metaphor, and it really allows us to work through something or see things from a different perspective through stories, through imagery that we can create in our mind without talking about the thing. So, all right, so the garden and the gate. So imagine that your life is a garden, like a really flourishing garden full of vegetables and berries. And like right now we're personally starting our own garden. It has raspberries and blackberries and rhubarb. What else do we have? I think that's it. Oh, and we've got some cherry trees too. But anyways, my husband said the other day, like, what if we made ourselves a pie with all these things in it? And I'm like, yeah, we'll call it we live on a mountain, so I called it the mountain pie. Anyways, so let's pretend that your life is a garden. It's a thriving garden. You're creating and planting in there things that you deeply enjoy to make your own pie, or maybe you're good at canning things and you want to preserve things. So your garden might look a little differently. All of our gardens are going to look different, right? Things that you that can grow in your area, things that you like to eat, things that you enjoy, things that you appreciate, things that flourish. You know, like we live at I think like 2,500 feet. So altitude is a factor, weather conditions. I know that things that I can grow here differ from what I could grow in Alaska when I lived there. But so let's pretend your life is a garden. and maybe you have flowers in it, and the flowers would represent your values. Okay, maybe the fruit represents peace. Maybe the vegetables represent joy. So now imagine putting up a gate, not locked, not a gate that locks, not a gate that's electrified, not spiked, but simply there to protect what's growing. And I know for sure where I live with deer, it's mandatory to have a 7-foot gate or fence for sure. So personal boundaries aren't there to isolate the garden and block out the sunlight, right? The gate, we need something around the gate to protect it from the critters, right? The deer, the gophers, the what else would eat at the garden? I know I've had issues with moose, deer, groundhogs, rodents too, because sometimes they'll dig down and damage the roots. So, we want personal boundaries where we want something to guard it from those things that could wreak havoc on the garden. But we don't want to block, we don't want a wall, we don't want a concrete wall, and also cover up the top to block out the sunlight. So we want to guard it and keep it to where it's able to grow and flourish as well. So the gate is not, or the fence is not going to be built out of fear, anger, frustration. When we build a wall, when we build concrete that blocks out the sunlight, we're basically blocking it from any kind of nutrition that it needs, right? We wouldn't even be able to get rainwater if we completely encased it in concrete. So when we build a fence that's built in a way to keep out what could harm the garden, but also let love and clarity and sunlight in, it's create something amazing and incredible, right? Anyways, that's kind of the perception that I get from boundaries that I hear in dialogues and conversations. Some conversations, most of the ones that I hear in real life, in real person, I don't have a coaching relationship with. These are people that I hear engaging and talking and like, oh, I set a boundary so they don't come over to my house anymore. I set a boundary so they don't make me upset anymore. I set a boundary, all these different words and ways that are boundaries are being used, where it's demands, forcing people to stay away or out, or so personal boundaries in my perspective and working with clients in a coaching capacity, in a coaching relationship, are very different. It's very much like the fence around the gate, where it lets air and wind and light and rain and all the good things, the nutrition it needs to come in. Okay, so personal boundaries begin in our mind, right? Not in the moment where we're reacting out of anger and frustration and some sort of trigger or being upset or resentment. When people set boundaries where they're forcing people to stay away, oftentimes that's out of feeling burnt out, feeling used, feeling bitter, feeling annoyed. It's basically boiling over to this point where they're setting some sort of enforcement. Okay, that's not at all what I teach. It's not something I'm a proponent of. That's not my come from. So the difference between a boundary and a personal boundary. So boundary, again, is out of anger, it's out of frustration, it's out of fear, it's out of exhaustion, it's at when you're at your max, when you're resentful, when you're sick, you're tired. And now it's time to demand and force and control a person, place, thing, situation, or circumstance. That's not at all what I teach. Okay. Being very, very, very clear. Personal boundaries, again, are set internally and they're kept internally. They're not voiced. They're not expectations. They're not demands. They're not agreements. They're not any of that. That's all different. Okay. So personal boundary is from a place of self-love, self-compassion. It comes from kindness to myself, right? So I'll speak in for me. It's from self-love, self-kindness, self-compassion. It's also to guard and protect with the fence that we can see through. It protects and honors my emotional, mental, and physical health. Okay, it puts those three things first and foremost. It's internalized, meaning I don't tattoo it on my forehead. I don't text it to people. I don't tell anybody. It's all internal. It feels really good. It honors it's honors and self-respects what I need and prioritizes me. I consider them kind of like bumpers or rails to maintain the balance in my life. I kind of think of I think they're bumpers or guards that you put in a bowling alley so the ball doesn't go in the gutter. That's what I kind of think of it as. I like the word rules. Sometimes clients don't like the word rules. They have a negative relationship to the word rules. But for me, I don't have a negative connotation. I find rules to be necessary in my life to keep the bumpers in the gutters. When people are overusing and abusing the word boundaries, they're reacting out of a feeling, right? Reacting out of a negative feeling. When I help my clients establish personal boundaries, it's out of self-love. And what I know to be true is, and this is also something that I work really in depth with brand new clients, is that feelings follow thoughts. Our actions or our behaviors follow feelings. It's a cycle. It's what we do hundreds, if not a million times a day. So if your thoughts are left on autopilot, if your thoughts are left to navigate through old patterns, old beliefs, old conditioning, and they're unexamined and you're not aware of them and they're just happening and you're reacting out of feelings and you're responding to life that's happening to you, oftentimes boundaries get set out of feeling rigid, feeling up against the wall, or when life feels chaotic, or when you were pushed into a corner or forced. Or what ends up happening, really honestly, is it makes it confusing for you and everybody else. And oftentimes this is when huge shifts happen in a relationship. Maybe at one point you were really attentive. Maybe you're overperforming in a relationship. Maybe you have a tendency to people please. And don't get me wrong, people pleasing has some amazing skills that are not natural to me. So I love my people pleasers out there. They have an ability to go above and beyond. And I think that it's a blessing and a curse, right? And tapping into the blessing side of it and honing in that and knowing before it hits to the curse side is key. So it's knowing what that means. But when we have a huge shift in a relationship, maybe you have years, decades of being a certain way, and then all of a sudden, because the resentment finally built up to a point where you boiled over, and then all of a sudden you go, don't call me anymore, don't text me anymore. A boundary, not a personal boundary, it's a boundary because you're voicing it. It oftentimes lands for the other person in a destructive way. Creates resistance, creates conflict, creates confusion, creates distance, it creates a wedge. And a lot of times people feel caught off guard, and it creates a ripple effect. So let's say someone's been feeling invisible in their relationship. And that person that feels invisible, right? When someone feels invisible, there's a thought that precedes that feeling invisible. And what that thought might be is he or she never listens to me. I always come last. I'm tired of feeling taken granted for. Okay. That thought, that inner dialogue, that unintentional thought, again, creates that feeling. If left unchecked, it creates that feeling of invisible. It creates that feeling of not good enough. It creates this feeling of, well, I'm, always second or third or fourth to them. So that thought, if left to unchecked, if it's left to its own accord, right? And we react out of that feeling, that thought and feeling can stir up even more feelings, right? Some old feelings that might be familiar, right? Maybe it's feeling abandoned or resentful or sadness, or maybe even anger. So what happens next, right? We have a thought, then we have a feeling, then we have an action, right? And then an outcome. So someone's actions that might follow all of that feeling, again, if unchecked, and if it's just, we just react to every single thought and feeling that we have, a person that thinks that and feels that way might snap more, might be more passive aggressive, might make small jabs, might pull away, might avoid, might go quiet, might throw a temper tantrum, might start slamming cabinets or slamming doors, and then saying things like, just don't bother. I just want to be by myself. Paradoxically, that statement creates more of what you don't want, right? It pushes the other person away. And that's setting a boundary out of a negative feeling, right? It's saying, don't bother, let me be by myself. That's not truly what you want. What you really probably want is connection, quality time, laughter, memories, creating things together, just maybe even looking at each other's eyes and just smiling and giggling, or sharing old stories or memories together. So when you throw up a boundary and push people away, you're likely going to get more of what you don't want. So, and when we create a boundary out of a negative feeling, it doesn't land clearly for the other person, and it makes them so confused. It comes out of reactivity, it comes out of rigidness. And it might sound like, I'm done doing anything for you if you don't appreciate me, or if you don't appreciate what I do, right? That's what it lands like. Because it's coming from pent up emotion, a negative emotion, rather than seeking to find clarity in that situation. And what it's going to be received by that other person is a curveball. It's going to feel like it came out of nowhere. Like, where did this come from? How did this happen? This is not like you. What did I do? And that's resistance. And then usually both people tend to go to their side of the boxing ring, and they justify their reasoning, how they see things. They point fingers, they blame, and conflict, right? Then they're in the middle of the ring fighting. And the other person definitely feels defensive, confused, maybe even offended. And what ends up happening is this snowballs, this spirals into more conflict, more friction, more distance, more words said that can't be retracted. Okay, so what is the point? If you don't stop and look at what your thoughts and your feelings are that start this whole chain, if you don't have that awareness, these sudden outbursts will come out of what seems to be out of nowhere. And they will feel like a punishment to the other person. So when boundaries are set from a negative emotion, the other person feels like they're being punished. And that creates a tremendous amount of friction in that dynamic. So you want to shift that? Well, it's really easy. It's actually very simple. We have to get really clear and self-aware of our own energy, our come from, our spirit, our aura, whatever it is, right? And it's really just a feeling. It's a simple shift to seeing how things are done, what the foundation is, what the come from is, what the flavor is. And it's really taking a pause and going, what are my thoughts? What are my feelings? What's surfacing for me here in this relationship? It's reflecting, being contemplative, being curious with yourself. What are the thoughts and feelings I'm having? Okay, so we have intentional and unintentional thoughts all day long, thousands and thousands of them. So an example of an unintentional thought would be, they take advantage of me. They use me, they take advantage of me, they don't see how hard I work, they don't respect me. Okay, that's an unintentional thought that might be from old stuff coming up. What is the emotion that follows that? Frustration, anger, resentment, fear, not good enough. What is the action that follows? Defensiveness, blame, outburst, maybe avoidance. What is the outcome of that? That's more tension, guilt, shame, frustration, distance, barriers, walls. Yeah. Okay, so an example of an intentional thought, kind of going along that same line, would be, it's okay for me to block out time for me to walk out the dog, and every day, right? It's okay for me to walk the dog in the park on nice days. Days that it's not nice, I'm going to pivot and I'm going to go to the gym and go sit in the sauna, right? It's time set aside. I'm going to block out every single day or 5 days a week, whatever. You pick your personal boundary. The emotion that follows that is self-respect, grounded, confidence, self-love, prioritization. The action that follows that is probably more action in your life, probably more positive momentum. And by doing this, the action that is required to facilitate this is likely placing a boulder in your calendar, right? So when you place a boulder in your calendar and you have a thought that I'm going to block out time for one of these things on my menu, oftentimes when I work with clients, if we do create a menu of things to do during that block of time, it's, again, if we're going to say we're going to walk the dog in the park, we've got to consider the fact that there might be a day that there's a blizzard or a rainstorm, or depending on where you live, a hurricane or a tornado. So we have to have a menu of things, right? We want to have consistency because the body and the brain love consistency and love familiarity. So that block of time, there could be a menu of things. So again, walk the dog or go to the gym, to the sauna, and maybe we name a few more things. You have a menu to reach for. But the action that follows by self-prioritization is likely greater self-love, right? Whatever that is, whatever your actions are, that maybe it's showing up 100% to your spouse, or showing up 100% to your kids or your family as a whole, or maybe you're single and you have a business and you're able to show up and have greater mental clarity because you prioritize this every single day. Could be in the morning, could be at night, could be midday, whatever it is, you pick your flavor. But the outcome is feeling more recharged, more reflective, more calm, more at peace, more relaxed. All right. So it's intentionally thinking, what is it that I need that benefits my mental, emotional, and physical needs? What is it that I need to create a personal boundary that has me showing up at a cadence that I know that I can do even on my worst day, that recharges me? Okay. I wanted to use the John and Sarah. I kind of flipped the script this time. So if you've been watching or listening to any of these podcasts in the past, I love to use the John and Sarah Two different minds, two different outcomes, storyline to kind of drive the point home on whatever the topic is. So today with boundaries and personal boundaries, so we'll do this in a way that's kind of fun, I think. Let's hope this lands. So the scenario is the first scenario, Sarah comes home from work and Sarah's visibly drained. John pays no attention, doesn't greet her. In fact, he's on his phone, sitting on the couch, scrolling away. Well, Sarah, again, feeling exhausted, tired, beaten up from her day at work, she's in a busy mind. She's on autopilot, and she's triggered at this circumstance that she walked into, this situation where John is on the couch, scrolling on his phone. She's thinking, I had a really long day. And now I walk into the house and the dishes aren't done. Dinner's not prepared. The dishes are smelling. They're piling up. They're in the sink. And instantly her mind jumps straight to, he doesn't care. If he cared, he would have this all done and have dinner ready for me. I do everything around here. I bring home the money. I work my tail off. Today I did a 12-hour shift. It's evident that he doesn't even care, right? So there's her thought and a little bit of feeling mixed in there. And she doesn't pause to question that thought or those feelings, right? She's already had a rough day. She's in a terrible mood. This is the icing on the cake. She doesn't pause. She just feels that sting, and it continues to grow as she stands there in the doorway and ruminates on it. And she starts thinking about all the things that John leaves incomplete. She starts tallying and keeping score in her head. Like all of this is happening in a split second. She's tallying and keeping score in the moment of how many times John lets her down. Without realizing it, instantly, her voice and body language and posture and her muscles in her neck just start to clench. And she says something like, wow, must be nice to be able to just relax all day. Okay, so that's the action, right? She had a thought, she had a feeling, and now her action is sarcasm, passive aggressive. So then she proceeds, V-lines for the kitchen, still wearing her work clothes, and very loudly starts clanking around the dishes, giving John these, I don't know, these eyes of disappointment. And she decides not to say anything else and give him the silent treatment. She's hurt. She's mad. And she doesn't realize that all of this is truly going on internally. And she feels justified in her actions. She feels that her reaction is what anyone else would do. It feels real. It feels like that sting is just getting bigger and stronger. And she's just getting so frustrated and mad internally. John, on the other hand, he's caught totally off guard. He's like, what'd I do wrong? Obviously, she walked in the door in a bad mood. You could just feel it. So instantly he's defensive. Instantly. And he barks back, you could have just asked me to do the dishes. It's not like I don't do anything around here. So both insecurities are rising, right? Both of them are insecure. Both of them feel like their characters being stabbed at, poked at. They're both triggered. They're both upset. John feels attacked. He feels like he has to defend himself. Neither of them are really talking about what matters to them most. Okay, so deep down, Sarah really just was hoping to come home and spend quality time with John. She wanted to feel supported. Right? She had a really rough day and her mood is really low. So instead of wanting to feel loved and supported, she's in the place of blame and reactivity. And as a result, the low mood overflowed onto John, and the distance is built, and they're both playing tug of war. Okay. So this is autopilot. This is old wiring. This is all unintentional thinking. This is an unexamined thought and feeling and emotion and then reactivity, which creates more disconnection, which is the opposite of what she wanted, right? She wanted to come home and get connection from a long day of work. So when we don't catch our thoughts and our feelings, we end up living out of reaction. It's kind of the same thing as thinking, oh, what sounds good right now? Big piece of brownie. I'm going to go eat that. When you're in a place right now where you're trying to cut back on your sugar, but that thought and that feeling like, ooh, I want a brownie, and I have some brownies at my finger or at my that are easy to access. I'm going to go get it, and you just eat it without thinking, right? It's reacting to a feeling. You are thinking because you did think, oh, I want a brownie. So that's reacting out of a feeling without really looking at that feeling and that thought, like examining it. Is this really in my best interest? Does this empower me to move forward in a way that mentally, emotionally, and physically is good for me? Okay. So let's switch it up. Let's do a clear-minded, intentional scenario. Same thing. Sarah walks in from a long day and she sees John on the couch. He's scrolling on his phone. The dishes still are piled up in the sink. And for a split second, there's that familiar thought. He doesn't care. I always have to do everything. But this time she catches it because she notices that not only did she walk in the door in a bad mood, that when she saw that whole situation, she felt her mood tip down even further. And that's not enjoyable. That's not what she wants to happen the rest of the night, because she knows that if she grabs onto that, it's going to only get worse and worse and worse and destroy the night. Maybe it'll destroy her sleep. Things are going to get worse. Maybe not just today, maybe for the next few days. She doesn't want that spiral. They've done that before. And she's like, I want to break this pattern. I want to break this loop. I want to break this cycle that we've been down before. This is like deja vu. This is like Groundhog Day. I don't want this. So instead, she pauses. And what she's been doing is she's been working with me, and we've been working on her emotional awareness. And what I've taught her is the feeling scale of 1 to 10. 1 being the worst feeling, 10 being the best feeling, and 5 being a neutral. Neutral is just an every boring day that's not memorable, nothing excited. It's just, you get up, brush your teeth, rinse, repeat, same thing, right? That's a 5. That's a normal day. But because her day was really rough, let's assume she's a 4. And again, she walks in that door and she was actually excited to come home because she thought, you know what? John's home. I'm excited to see him. I've had a really rough day. And I know that we could create an experience together that can move me from a 4 to a 5, or maybe even a 6, right? So she's aware that she herself has the power to move herself from a 4 to a 6. And so because of our emotional awareness coaching, she pauses and checks in. How do I want to feel? I don't want to feel angry. I don't want to feel upset. So I want to feel connected. I don't want to be connected with John. I want to recharge. I want to feel safe. I want to feel relaxed. I want to feel calm. I want to recharge. I want to feel patient. I want to feel serenity, whatever the words are for Sarah. Okay. So she exhales deeply, maybe even takes a real deep breath and blows it all out. Right now, I want to feel connected. Connected for her is the word that she wants to anchor into. So she shifts and decides, in order for me to feel connected, I know what I need to say out loud. So from a quiet, calm, peaceful voice, and she relaxes her shoulders. Again, she took a deep breath and she says to John, hey, you know what? I missed you today. Would it be all right if we just spend a little bit of time and connect and put everything on mute and just chill on the couch together? Out of her surprise, John will look up, put his phone down, and says, yeah, let's do that. I miss you too. And he actually gets up and gives her a big hug. And that's where connection starts that evening. You know, the dishes can wait. So look at how this is the same scenario, different mindset, different outcome. Sarah didn't betray herself. Sarah didn't ignore that thought and that feeling, that trigger when she opened up the door. She saw that there was a choice to respond from love and not fear. She saw that she could respond from a heartfelt, loving place versus reacting out of a fear-based, old wiring place. She honored the fact of what she really needed in that moment was connection. And in order to get connection, she needed to give it first. That's leading emotionally in a relationship. No controlling, no guilt tripping, no passive aggressiveness. Sarah's not a dictator. She's not righteous. She's just wanting to connect. The dishes can wait. So this is setting an emotional boundary. This is setting a personal boundary from love. And it's not about being soft or being a doormat. That's not at all what I'm pointing to. It's about choosing to lead in your relationship. It's choosing to set the pace. It's choosing to set an example. It's choosing to set the tone. It's choosing to set the energy, setting the spirit of how the rest of the night goes. So what was the outcome of John and Sarah that night? They ended up doing dishes together, playing an old playlist from when they were in college together. Okay. So let that land. Boundaries are not concrete walls. Boundaries are fences that lets the sunlight in, the rain, the love. Personal boundaries are clarity. Personal boundaries are really grounded in your values. What matters most to you? Is it connection with your loved ones? Is it establishing more goodwill in your relationship? What is it that you want with this other person that is triggering you? What is it that you want from them? In order to get it from them, it's about giving it first without expecting it to come back. But chances are you will get it back. So the next time you have a thought and a feeling, when you have a feeling that's maybe a 4 or a 3, pause, take a deep breath, breathe, get curious. What are the thoughts that preceded that low feeling? Ask yourself, how do I want to feel? And lead with that emotion. Lead with wanting to feel connected, calm, understanding, curious, open, optimistic, loving, supportive. I mean, obviously it depends on the situation, but speak from that energy, speak from that tone and that spirit, not from a triggered story. I have clients ask me, does that negative thought loop and cycle, does that voice in their head ever go away? Likely no. it will get quieter and quieter with each time that you circumvent it, each time that you hear it, have awareness of it, thank it for that beautiful thought that's obviously trying to protect you in some way, and choose how you want to feel and choose to act and respond from love. It will take time. It does. It's your brain that requires repetition. And yes, that voice will get quieter and quieter, and you'll have less grip on you. So the question I'd like you to reflect on and put in the comments if you're brave. What would change if you slowed down before reacting and you made clear and aware what thoughts and feelings you're having in every single moment? Now, when I say slow down, it's metaphorically, like it doesn't take a long time to sort this out. You can do it in the heat of the moment. You could do it when someone's honking at you in traffic. You can do it in smaller moments. Maybe somebody cuts in front of you in line at the grocery store, or somebody comments something rude on social media. That's a great one, because you're going to have an infinite number of times on how to respond, right? You don't have to react in a second. You can respond, learn how to respond. And if you're open to it, post a comment of an example or a scenario, and let's work through it from a response from love versus a reaction of fear. Happy to work that. Even on my website, there's a place to do that. But I hope that today will give you some clarity on boundaries versus personal boundaries. And notice the use of boundaries in people's dialogues out there in conversation or social media, and how it's being used from a place of fear. Boundaries being used as a demand. It's interesting. And let people, unless they're open to hearing, this perspective, if you're open to it, if this lands for you, this is something that you want to take with you, let people have their way of boundaries unless they're open to your insight, right? Ask permission to share what you've learned through this video. If you have learned anything, I hope you have. But we want to make sure that however people are using it, let them use it their way, unless you have a relationship and have enough rapport to say, let me share something with you. Is that okay? Would you be open to a new perspective on boundaries versus personal boundaries? Feel free to share this YouTube. But when we do personal boundaries really well and they come from love, they're not loud. In fact, I don't voice my personal boundaries. I don't, because they're for me, right? They are not voiced. I don't tell anybody about it, because I don't, if we voice them, then people are walking on eggshells and they got to remember everybody's boundaries. That's not fair. Personal boundaries are for me, and nobody needs to know what they are. They're very clear. They're protecting my emotional, mental, and physical energy. That's it. Very simple. They're not rigid. They're not rude. They're not demands. They're not vocal. They're not tattooed on my forehead. They're not typed out in messages. They're not pointed at people and yelled at people. Just like Sarah did. She created an internal boundary. She created an energetic boundary. She chose to regulate her own mind and her own emotions instead of outsourcing them on John and demanding that he have the dishes done and the dinner ready before she gets home. So she, in essence, created a boundary for her thoughts. Like, thank you, brain, for that. That sounds like a concrete wall. That sounds very dictatory. I don't know if that's a word. And she regulated herself, which compounded how John felt about her. Right? She shared, "I missed you today," and John was like, "Me too. I missed you too." Puts his phone down, and they really connected. The truth be known, the fact that the dishes weren't done and the dinner wasn't done can't make her feel angry, upset, frustrated, or annoyed. Those people, places, things, situations, and circumstances can't make you feel any kind of way. It's our thoughts and our feelings that we get wedded to. It's our thoughts and our feelings that we get sucked into and we believe and get attached to and voice to people and say that things should be done this way. It's just stories. So instead of Sarah running off to the races with her trigger and believing that he doesn't care, she realized in the moment, you know what, I'm tired and I need connection. So my request is to drop the assumptions and facilitate the means to get what I really need, and that's connection. And that flipped her day from a 4 to probably an 8, right? Imagine them in the kitchen doing dishes and the music playing from the 80s or whatever it was. I don't know the age of John and Sarah. Again, they're fake scenario, but what if that's true, right? The 70s or the 80s and out there and they're just jamming out to these musics and doing like this karaoke with the spoon. I don't know. Can you imagine? Those moments are going to be moments that they cherish for the rest of their lives. So this is a high level emotional personal boundary. It's powerful. It brings more connection. So in essence, Sarah isn't letting this old story, this old belief, this old cycle and pattern to run the show and destroy that night, destroy her sleep. She speaks from what she really needs in a loving way. She's not demanding or controlling John. She's not wishing he would do things differently. And she's not suppressing her feelings either. She's voicing it. She's choosing to lead in the relationship for the moment. She's clearly speaking, and she's speaking from kindness. She's speaking from love. That's a personal boundary. That's personal leadership. Okay. Final question. Have you ever regretted a reaction and didn't know how to stop yourself? I think we all can raise our hand. What have you learned about personal boundaries in this video? Couple questions. Feel free to put them in the comments and feel free to share this if somebody could use this. Right? If somebody's using the word boundaries a lot and they're finding that it's destroying relationships around them, I've seen it. It's wild. Like they're just burning bridges all over the place and they're finding out they're isolating themselves more and more. Paradoxically, getting less connection, getting less intimacy in their relationships. So feel free to share this with someone that's overusing the word boundaries and using it as a wall, a concrete wall. Leave a comment, reach out to me at a text number of 509-800-7264. If you'd like to know more, if you'd like to have a conversation with me and you want to discuss boundaries further or anything else, I'm here for you. All right. I hope you enjoyed this. I did. And I kept it under an hour. Surprise. All right, guys. I'll see you next time.